Okay, good morning. So today we sweep through Evans's causal theory of names, and we'll continue sweeping through it on Monday, and then it'll be a wrap on sense and reference and theories of reference. I want to begin by just going back over what Kripke's view was, and put it in terms of I don't think we put it quite in these terms earlier, but in terms of dossiers and files. So dossiers, files, yeah, you build up a file on a person, like, I guess that's all done electronically nowadays, but in the old days it used to be if you're a file on a person, you literally have a bit of cardboard, right? You put that stuff in. So you can think of yourself as building up mental files on all the people around you, kind of the way the NSA does. You have these, like you do it too, right? You have dossiers and everyone. You say the things I could tell you about him or whatever. So each file that you have on people is labeled with a name. And then you could put the question of reference as being, what's the relation that has to hold between the information that's in the file and the person out there for that person to be the reference of the name. And if you think of, remember Kripke's example of the Gödel gang, this bunch of desperados that steal the credit for proving the incompleteness of arithmetic. That was done by someone else outside the Gödel gang. But the name Gödel, according to Kripke, refers to this man, even if he stole the credit. Yep. Even if the work was actually done by someone else. The name Gödel refers to the same person, whether or not he actually did discover the incompleteness of arithmetic. And Kripke had this two-stage picture. First of all, there's the initial baptism, right? Where you say, well, in the case of Gödel, you might say there may literally have been a baptism where you say, I dub this person Gödel, Kurt. You point to the thing, or you say, I'm going to use this name to talk about someone, and then to talk about this person. And then there's a chain of communication where the name is passed from speaker to speaker, right? So that was Kripke's two-stage picture of reference. The initial baptism, and then the chain of communication. And that's obviously got a lot going for it, right? That's like a correct description of what actually happens very often. So surely it must be like that, mustn't it? Two stages. The initial baptism, and then the chain of communication. And then the reference to the name is fixed by going back along the chain of communication to the initial baptism and whatever thing was there at the initial baptism. It's got to be like that, yes? Despite the tragic consequences for self-knowledge that we were looking at last time. Yes? Okay, well, there are problems though. I mean, remember there was this example of overhearing people talking about Rumsfeld and these dictums about known unknowns and all that, and thinking that Rumsfeld is a pre-Socratic philosopher. If that's what happens, then you've got a chain of communication, all right, and it goes back to an initial baptism. But do you really know what you're talking about when you say Rumsfeld? If you say, no, Rumsfeld was obviously a great influence on Plato, or, whatever, you're just so far off the mark there. And Evans has this example of someone who hears people in a bar talking about Louis XIV and think that this is the name of a basketball player. Yeah, are you really referring to Louis? You've got the chain of communication going back to the initial baptism, but the trouble with this two-stage picture is that you're looking at a chain of communication that may go back hundreds of years, thousands of years, to an initial baptism where God knows what was going on all those thousands of years ago. And what does that have to do with our present interests and concerns in using language? That really seems kind of mysterious. Reference has been turned into this kind of arcane technical phenomenon where The use of language in ordinary communication is so tightly connected to all that we're currently interested in. How can something so central to the functioning of language be this kind of buried away in the past technical thing? Evans says, one could regard the aim of his paper as being to restore the connection which must exist between strict truth conditions, right, the semantic values of the parts and the truth or falsity of sentences. There's got to be a connection between the strict truth conditions of a statement and the beliefs and interests of the users of the sentences, if the technical notion of strict truth conditions is to be of interest to us. And when we're talking, we care about whether what we say is true or false. Yeah? But if reference was simply a technical notion, it would be very hard to see why we should care about truth or falsity. And Kripke's making it a technical notion. And one way Evans starts to get at this is to say, well, does that idea of an initial dubbing ceremony really matter? I suppose that you live in a village and there is, let's say, a coach trip stops at your village. People get off and the villagers talk to them. But there were, on one child, one little girl, catches everyone's attention. They call her Goldilocks. And then, you know, let's suppose it's quiet in the village. People talk about Goldilocks for years afterwards. They say, whoa, wasn't that a wonderful day when the coach trip came past our village? But suppose that there were two identical twins on the bus. The villagers didn't realize there was two of them. Yes? And there was a dubbing ceremony that involved one rather than the other. But does it really make sense to say that the villagers are talking about one rather than the other of these girls when they're talking about Goldilocks? And let's suppose that one built a sandcastle, one blew bubbles. They were completely simple people, these villagers. They're completely captivated by this, right? And they just amalgamate the stories. Are they talking about one rather than the other? The causal chain really does go back to an initial dubbing ceremony at which one rather than the other was dubbed Goldilocks. But Evans's point is, there's nothing in the villagers' current beliefs or interests that really justifies discriminating between the two of them and saying one rather than the other is what we are talking about. You're saying that the truth or falsity of your statements about Goldilocks depends on what was going on with one rather than the other of these children. Yeah? That's the thing about reference being made a technical notion. It seems to be remote to say anything we care about, to say, well, it went back to this dubbing ceremony. Nobody cares about the dubbing ceremony. Yeah? Or another of Evans's examples, an urn is discovered in the Dead Sea containing documents on which are found fascinating mathematical proofs. And inscribed at the bottom is the name Ibn Khan. And people say, wow, what a great mathematician Ibn Khan was. I didn't know they had such great mathematicians back then. He or she anticipated lots of current mathematical proofs. And then much later, it's found that below Ibn Khan is written in tiny letters, id scripsit, the scribe. So that there is a chain here, all right, and it goes back to when the humble scribe was initially baptized, was initially dubbed. Yeah? But nobody cares about the scribe. I mean, that's why it's tough being a scribe, right? I mean, who cares about the humble scribe? When people were talking about Ibn Khan, what they were interested in was the person who wrote the proofs. Yeah, the causal chain goes back through the centuries to that dubbing ceremony where the humble scribe was dubbed. But our beliefs and interests in talking about Ibn Khan have got nothing to do with the humble scribe. What we care about is the proofs. I mean, if what we really admired was the handwriting of the scribe, then it would be different, right? If we were saying that's just great calligraphy. But we're not saying that's great calligraphy. Let's suppose the calligraphy is barely adequate, but the maths is terrific. Then what we're talking about is the mathematician. Yeah, Kripke's got this technical notion of reference. It's not that it's not well defined. I mean, it's not that well defined, but it's it doesn't seem to be connecting to what we're currently concerned with. Yeah. So the initial dubbing ceremony doesn't seem to be that important. And the chain of communication, the way Kripke describes it, doesn't seem to be that important either. And Kripke says not any chain of communication will do. I mean, not any causal chain will matter. And there was that example I gave of someone calling their cat Wittgenstein after the philosopher. When they're using Wittgenstein to talk about their cat, there's a causal connect back to the name of the philosopher, back to the philosopher, but they're not referring to the philosopher. And Kripke's way of dealing with that kind of case is to say, well, when the name is passed from link to link, when the name is passed on from person to person like a baton, the receiver of the name must intend, when he learns it, to use it with the same reference as the person from whom he heard it. And Evans is a famous counterexample to this. Oops. In the case of Madagascar, I mean, I only know about this from reading Evans, so this is Madagascar, right? So you're standing on the east coast of Africa, looking out and saying, what is that island there? You're Marco Polo. And the Malay or Arab sailors to whom you're talking misunderstand what you're asking and think you're asking about the name of some chunk of the mainland, right? Some ridges in the mainland, just over which the island is visible. They think you're talking about that chunk of the mainland, and that chunk of the mainland is called Madagascar. Yeah. So Marco Polo says, okay, the island is called Madagascar, and he writes it down. And then when he comes back, he says, and there's this big island off the coast, it's called Madagascar. And that use of the name grips, right? That goes on for to the present day, that the island is called Madagascar. So there was a causal chain going back here to the initial dubbing ceremony of a part of the mainland. But nowadays, we are not going to say, on finding out this fact, my God, we've been wrong about Madagascar all these years. We thought Madagascar was an island, but actually it is not. You know, you thought you were vacationing in Madagascar. You were actually vacationing in some nameless large island. Nobody's going to say that, right? The way reference is connected to what we currently care about, this is literally ancient history. I mean, nobody gives a damn about this, right? It just doesn't matter for the current functioning of language that is what went on. So reference can shift despite having a causal chain of Kripke's type and an intention to preserve reference. And actually we've discussed that, we've come upon that point a number of times before. Class, where have we come upon that point before? Sorry? Water and nature. Yes, very good. In unnoticed travelling between Earth and twin Earth. Is that what you mean? Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Anywhere else? Yes? Spot, dear old Spot, yes. Right. In the story of Spots, right? That's exactly what happened. Everyone intends to be, well, most of the people involved intend to be referring to, using the name to refer to the same object all the way through, but their reference shifts. So Kripke's theory can't be right. Yep. If reference can shift despite a causal chain plus an intention to preserve reference, then Kripke's theory is wrong. Okay, so Evans has an alternative theory that uses this notion of the dominant source of information. So here's the first definition. When you're talking, you intend to refer to whoever is the dominant source of your information. So when you're talking about a person, when you or I are gossiping about someone and you're saying, you won't believe, or I'm saying, you won't believe the latest, here's what just happened, then who am I talking about? Well, I've got a file in my head, I've got a dossier on that person, and whoever's the dominant source of the information there, that's who I mean to be talking about. Yeah? Usually, our knowledge or belief about particular items is derived from information gathering transactions involving a causal interaction with some item or other, conducted ourselves. Actually, let me just change the order I was going to, I was going to do things in here. Suppose you, to get the feel for what Evans is talking about here, suppose you think about referring to an object you can see right in front of you. So I say, I'm referring to this bag, right? We have here I have here a simple bag. So you're referring to that bag, right? On the basis of your perception of it. If I say this bag, then there's no causal chain going through hundreds of years of speakers, right? It's just, or if you talk about that bag, it's just your current perception of the thing that is letting you talk about it. Yep. So how does that work? Well, if you're going to perceive an object, that object has to be causally affecting you. Right? Light has to be bouncing off the object and hitting your eyes. And let me give a simple example. This is the kind of example philosophers love. It doesn't happen very often, but suppose you are looking at a bag. Suppose we have here a bag, right? And here you are. So this is you. And let us suppose that there is, as so often in these cases, an unnoticed mirror. Follow me very closely. So you don't know the mirror is there, right? The mirror is at 45 degrees to your line of sight. And over here, there just happens to be a bag exactly like that one. Right? And if I've drawn this right, then the bag reflected in the mirror looks to be at exactly the position that this bag is at. Yep. And they look exactly similar. Now, if you think of the information that you've got here, the perceptual information, let's suppose the two bags are just identical, right? I mean, not one and the same, but highly similar. Yep. Then, which bag best matches your perceptual information? The one behind the mirror or the one over here? Who said behind? Yes, that is the right answer. Say it louder. Right, because the two bags are exactly similar. So the qualitative content of your perception is matched equally by the two bags, right? They're exactly the same color, shape, size, and so on. Yep. But this one's at the location that it seems to you to be, that the bag seems to you to be. Yes? So the one behind the mirror is the one that best matches your perceptual information. Yes? Because you're equally correct about both of them in every possible thing except location, and you're not getting right the location of this one, but you are right about the location of that one. Yep. But which bag is the one that you're seeing? Can you see the bag behind the mirror? Put your hand up if the answer is yes. If the answer is no, that's right, it is hidden by the mirror. Right? That's the whole thing about the example. Can you see the bag reflected in the mirror? Put your hand up if the answer is yes. And if the answer is no, the bag reflected in the mirror. You can see that one. Okay, so why is that? Well, because this is the bag that you're causally connected to. This is the bag that's making a difference to your perception. Yeah? So when you say this or that, and you're talking about objects that you're referring to, then you need a causal theory of reference there. Right? You're talking, when I say this bag, I'm talking about the bag that's causally affecting me. The bag that's in perception and building up a file about the bag. Yeah? So perceiving an object is generating a cluster of information or a dossier on that thing. And there's a question, which of the causes of my perception is the one I'm perceiving? What I mean is, again, observe this simple bag. As you look at the bag, is the sunlight, is the sun playing a causal role in your perception of the thing? Of course it is. There's light from the projector. Is the projector playing a causal role in your perception of the thing? But does observation of the bag allow you to refer to the sun or to the projector? You couldn't, I can't see the sun from here, right? I'm not in a position to refer to the sun or to refer to the projector. So what's going on is that the sun, actually, here we have the sun, right? The projector, they're all causally affecting you, yeah? But you're only able to refer to the bag. Why is that? If causation is a key thing, all these things are causally affecting you, yeah? So why pick out the bag? Why pick in the bag? Yeah?
Wait, can you refer to the sun still, though? Like, say you're holding your bag in the room,
yeah.
If the light was shining on it, and all of a sudden the light starts turning from yellow to blue to red.
Right.
Look, it was sunlight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The sunlight, yes, right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That is a really good example, actually. But I think you don't yet necessarily, you're not yet necessarily able to refer to the sun. Yeah? The sun is causally involved, but you might not know it's the sun that's causally involved. Maybe you think you're in a room where there's just artificial light.
Or if you're outside then.
Okay. You can always frame the description or use the term the sun, because you know what the sun is anyhow, right? The same way we're using in this conversation, right? We all know yes, we all know about the sun, right? But we knew about that anyway, right? We've known about it for years. It doesn't depend on your current perception of it. You see what I mean? But your current perception is allowing you to refer to the bag in a way that your current perception doesn't generate the ability to refer to the sun. You're just exploiting the ability you had anyway. If you didn't know about the sun, you wouldn't have been able to use the term that thing to refer to the sun kind of from scratch. Yeah, you see what I mean? So why is that? They're all causally connected. And we're saying causal chains are the important thing. So they're all implicated in the causation of your dossier. So yes?
Because when you fix your reference on the bag, it captures all these other attributes.
When you fix it,
Because it seems as though, suppose there's no sun outside and it's really dark, and your perception of the bag is that it's black.
yeah.
So that way, when you identify the bag, you identify it with all these other attributes that contribute how we perceive the bag to be.
There must be something right about that. But it doesn't articulate why it's the sun, why it's the bag rather than the sun that you're referring to. Yeah, because you could play that the other way. I'm talking about the sun. I'm just catching these attributes of it, like it's bouncing off, as light from it is bouncing off this bag. You see what I mean? But it seems to me that you just can't say that thing in this situation and refer to the sun unless you knew about it already. The sun is like part of the background that's making reference possible. But what's that distinction? 1, 2, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if this is right, but could we say that the sun does not have a real causal connection at all, but rather we see the bag by way of the sunlight, so it's not necessarily causal?
That's very good, yeah. Again, actually, there must be something right about that. We see the bag by way of the sunlight. We don't see the sunlight by way of the bag.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. That must be right. But can you spell that out? Why put it that way? Why not say the bag reveals the presence of the sun to me? I couldn't see the bag if it wasn't for the sun, therefore the sun must be there.
I don't know, it seems like, because if the sun had a real causal connection, then I feel like you wouldn't need the bag at all.
If the sun, right, if you're looking right at the sun, well, I'm not suggesting you try this, but yeah, if you were looking at the sun through a bit of glass or whatever, then you could refer to it directly. Yeah. Okay, but what's the distinction there? Why doesn't what we're doing right now, just looking around the room, count as getting the sun directly? Because we're getting its causal effects.
What I'm saying is we're not getting a causal.
But it is yeah. Actually, you said that, and then you said something more nuanced, right? It can't be right to say we're not getting its causal effects. I mean, because it is causally involved. If you took away the sun, you wouldn't see anything at all, right? You need lights, right? Indirectly, but it's still causing, yeah? So the question is, what's that distinction between direct and indirect? How do you explain what that means? The other thing you said was, you're seeing the bag by way of the sun, you're not seeing the sun by way of the bag. And that really is good, you know, that really must be the center of it. But how do you explain what that distinction comes to? Because all we said so far is cause, and there are two causal factors here. I mean, what it means is they're both causal factors, the sun and the bag. So we need something more discriminating than just cause, yeah? 1, 2, 3, yep.
So there is a cause connection that involves, like, in this particular case, the perception that involves the sun. But I would say that the reason as to why, like, there's a difference of, like, sort of priority between objects.
Some sort of priority between objects, yeah.
It's like there's an intentional mental state that directs, or that is directed at the bag.
Yes,
that
right.
differentiates the bag from the sun, and the cause connection is this between object A and object B.
Yeah.
So I would say that the reason as to why we focus primarily on the bag is because there's an intentional mental state.
Right, you're intending to refer to the bag, to what, a bag-like object or something like that?
So there's also
Yeah.
a cause connection that allows us to see that. There's
Yeah.
like a difference of priority.
Right, I see that, but the trouble I have with that is it makes it seem like, if I'm just looking around the room, I say, okay, there's a bag, okay? So I look around the room a bit more and I say, there's the heavenly object. I mean, if I can do that with the bag, why can't I do it with the sun? You see what I mean? And what you've said so far is good and right, I think, but it doesn't explain why I can't do that. I mean, it seems like I can't do that. I can't just look around the room and say, the heavenly object, and intentionally focus on that. But what I've got with the bag is, I've got the bag being a cause of my perception, plus the intentional bit. So I've also got the sun being a cause of my perception, now plus the intentional bit. But I do it with the bag and it works, and I do it with the sun and it doesn't work. So do you think I can do it with the sun? I say the heavenly object.
What you're saying that you can't possibly have an intentional mental state of the sun?
In just looking around the room right now, I mean, the sunlight is causally affecting your vision, but it's not doing it in such a way that you can just intentionally now refer to it. You see what I mean, in the way that you can with the bag? Does that make sense? Yeah. I mean, somehow, you're completely right. The mechanism you're describing works fine in the case of the bag. It doesn't work in the case of the sun. So what went wrong? Yep.
So you're thinking of demonstratives here, right?
This and that, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not that you can't refer to the sun, because of course you could say like the thing illuminating the back, but it's that you can't refer to the sun by going back.
That's right. That's exactly what I mean. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I mean about starting from scratch. Yeah. Yeah.
So like, I don't know, I can refer to all kinds of things that are causally connected to you. I can go like, your mom.
Yes, right, right.
Your reference to
Your mom must be sorry, that kind of thing. Yes, right.
But I can't go like that, I'm gonna go to your mom.
Yes, right. That's exactly it. Yeah, yeah. Does that make sense? I mean, we've done so much in descriptions versus simpler referring terms. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
I'm like still trying to figure out how to express this, but I think like when you're looking at the bag, if that bag gets switched out, you're looking at a different bag, so you're focusing specifically on that bag. Whereas like the sun,
You mean in this case?
just
No.
in case of looking at the bag.
Okay, so, all right, take me through that again. Okay, so I'm looking at the bag, that part.
Say that,
Yep,
I'm looking at the bag, and I'm
Right.
looking specifically at that bag.
Yeah.
If that bag gets switched out, I'm
Yeah.
no longer
Yeah.
looking at that bag. Whereas like if I'm just trying to point at the light, it could be sunlight, it could be candlelight, it could be any other kind of artificial light. So
that's right.
I guess there's sort of the ability to.
That's very good. There's a way in which you can, there's some sense in which you can lift out the bag from its surroundings, but you can't lift out the sun from its surroundings. Yeah, despite the causal connection. Yeah, that's great. I just agree with that. It remains to explain exactly what lift out means, but yeah, that's very good. 1, 2. Yeah.
So it seems like by that example, I actually really agree with it. It's the bag is the dominant and unique source of information.
The bag is a dominant and unique source of information. Damn good. Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
sunlight, you can refer to the sunlight by say looking at the whiteboard. And you can
Yeah.
say, oh, I see it by the sunlight. It's not unique to the bag, but the
Yeah.
bag is the unique source of your perception of it.
Yeah.
So sunlight is proliferate everywhere, and it doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you use to observe it.
Okay. Again, I agree. That's really homing in on the thing. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're saying in the case of things where it's this and that, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
it has to be the immediately observable thing. And by that I mean like the first layer kind of thing. By that I mean,
Yeah.
like we can't. I mean, if we went outside, we just went to the sun and be like that.
Yeah.
But it's not first layer observable.
Yeah.
In this way, right? Is that what
Yeah, I agree with that. You would have to gloss what you mean by observable, yeah, because in the face of it, you might say, no, that just plays back the original problem, right? Why do we say you're observing the bag, but not that you're observing the sun? You see what I mean? But you're really appealing to what these other guys are saying. By observable, I mean you can kind of lift out the bag, or it's the dominant source of your information, something like that? Yeah, that's really what you have in mind. Yeah. Last one. Yeah. Yeah, right. We need that distinction between the background conditions of illumination, of the background conditions of perception. I mean, someone said this a while ago, and what you're seeing by way of something, and what is the thing you're seeing itself. Yeah. But the question is, how do you explain that distinction? Yeah. Because if all we've got so far is the idea of causation being very important, well, that's fine, but we need more than just causation. That's the point. Yep. What Evans suggests is as someone just said, it's the dominant source of the cluster of information that the perception generates. That's the object you're seeing. But I think let me just suggest this to you. This is not quite something Evans says, but this is not in this essay. But there is a way of filling out the last few comments people were making, which is to say, if I look at the bag, then if I think of my eyes as a meter, or my perception as an instrument for picking up how things are with the bag, then there are lots of different aspects of the bag that I'm sensitive to. For example, if you varied the shape, well, you don't have to take my word for this, just watch me, look at that. Right. As I do that, I'm making a systemic difference to the shape of the bag, right? Yes? You can try this with your own object. And as I do this, as I change the shape of the bag, let me ask you, is there a difference in the way your perception of the bag is? Yes. And if I rotate it, is there a difference in the way your perception of the bag is? If I move it from, right? So there are all these dimensions along which your perception is very sensitive to exactly the details, systemically sensitive to the details of how things are with the bag. With the sun, your perception is not systemically sensitive to all these different aspects of it. You're sensitive to whether it's brighter or not, but that's all. That's about it. If the sun gets bigger or smaller, well, if there are, the sun there's lots of stuff going on in the sun the whole time, right? All these flares and so on, yeah? But you're not getting any of that. So you're highly differentially sensitive to what's going on with different aspects of the bag. I mean that to be a way of spelling out the lift it out kind of thing. You can lift out the bag and fasten onto any change in it, be very sensitive to any change in it. You can't do that with the sun, just the way we are right now. Yep.
But I sort of feel like we're equally sensitive to the change in the light, because you could take the bag and just turn it very, very slowly.
Right. It would, that's right. But the thing is, with the bag I don't have just that. I have this sensitivity along so many different dimensions. Yeah? I mean, a simple way to put it is to say, you can say the bag is brown, it's rectangular, it's about 1 foot long, stuff like that. As you sit here right now, if I say that heavenly body, can you tell me anything about it? What color is it? Is it big? Is it small? Is it far away? Is it near? Just your current perception doesn't let you do any of that stuff. Yeah? So there's such a huge difference in the way that we're systematically sensitive to the bag, but not systematically sensitive to the sun. That, I think, here's my suggestion. That's what it means to say we're lifting out the bag from its background. Yeah. Whereas we can't, just the way we're sitting right now, lift the sun out from its background and focus differentially in different aspects of it. And if the sun suddenly changed from being square to from being round, the sun's round, right? Yes. It's always drawn as round. Okay. Well, I'm never quite sure. Okay, but if the sun suddenly changed from being round to being rectangular, would you know? You know the slightest idea, right? You're not a bit sensitive to these fine properties of it. Melissa, is that all right? Okay, just checking. Okay, so that's one way to think of what's going on in perception. You're referring to the dominant source, but it's not just the dominant source. You're systemically sensitive to what's going on with the thing. So you can say, this table, that person, that bag is round, square, brown, moving, stationary, at this position, at that position, and so on. Yep.
Suppose I'm looking at night at the star.
Yeah.
And it took several years for that light to travel through me. So it's possible that the star doesn't exist anymore when I say.
Yes, that's right. It is possible that it doesn't exist anymore.
In a way, I'm not very sensitive to the change.
You're not very sensitive to current changes in the object. Indeed, there aren't any current changes in the object because it's not there anymore, right? You get his example that there's that time lag, and even with the sun, right, it's 8 minutes or something, right? It used to be 8 minutes, it might not be anymore. But yeah, right, there's a time lag, so you can be looking at a star that's been dead for hundreds of years. Yeah. You're presumably, if you're seeing the thing at all, if you're able to refer to the thing at all, you're presumably referring to the past object. Yeah. So if it twinkles, then presumably it was twinkling all those hundreds of years ago, and that's what you're sensitive to. You see what I mean? So you're getting everything right, except when all this is happening. You're even getting the temporal order of the things you see right. It would be because of that that you'd want to say, well, I can still refer to it, even though it's no longer there. Yeah. Yep.
So just to clarify, so if we imagine a very strange person was extremely systemically sensitive to what was going on with the sun, but for some reason, like, did a really bad job of seeing things very close up to them.
Very good. Yeah, that could happen. Yeah.
So in that case, that person would have an easy time
Referring to the sun.
referring to the sun, but would have a very hard time referring to anything.
That's exactly what I'm suggesting. Yeah, that's very good. Yeah. Okay, and I think that's right. I mean, that seems like the right answer, does it? Yeah. Okay. So if you think of perception like that, perception gives you things that you're causally connected to. You're the dominant source of a dossier, and you're generating a dossier along many dimensions because your information gathering sensitivity is picking up all these different dimensions of the object. You can think of memory like that too, right? You can talk about people you knew back then. I promise you this happens more and more as you get older. You sit by the fire, you say, that guy with the black hair I used to know all these years ago, what happened to him? You know, right? So you can do that, right? You're certainly referring to someone, and it's like presumably perception at a distance. There's this person, or it's a little bit like oh yes, how poignant it is, the dead star, right, that you're picking up in the information from, even though it may have been dead years ago. Yeah. And then in memory, you've got that thing that you're causally sensitive at a distance to the thing. Yeah. So you can refer to these people from your past. Yeah, even though you can't remember their names, you can't really remember very much about them, but you've got that direct way of saying that man or whatever it is. Yeah. So similarly, I mean, you think of memory like that. I don't know if that helps, but now you understand, right? I mean, you could think that what happens is you get your initial perceptual input about the person, right? You really saw them, talked to them all those years ago. You hang on to that information. Then you get some new fresh set of information that makes you review what you knew already. You say, well, people like that are always insanely jealous, or whatever it is. You refresh your memory knowledge, and it propagates over the years, right? You transmit your knowledge from the past perceptual encounter with the object right down to the present day, and that allows you to refer to the person. And presumably it's similar for when people tell you things about someone. Yeah? What happens is that, yep.
But what about false memories?
False memories. Yes, very good. Okay, what kind of thing is a false memory?
So it's like if you just think something occurred that it didn't actually happen, so you actually
Right.
don't have any perception.
Okay, there are two different cases here. One is the case where this is something completely imaginary. What I mean is the person involved in your memory didn't exist. There was no such person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that the kind of case you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that can happen. Yeah. I as a child have I have a memory as a child of seeing robots walking about the house I lived in. I can remember it even now, and surely that wasn't right. Right? I mean, I can't refer to anything in the basis of those memories. Yeah, I can pretend, I can say those robots, but it doesn't really refer to anything, right? Right? Does it? Yeah, so that's the case you mean. Yeah, okay, whatever the causal chain is, it's not going back to the past object. Yeah. Now, part of what's interesting about that case is that there presumably is a causal chain, right? It might have been there was, I don't know, a washing machine or something that as a child I significantly misinterpreted. You see what I mean? So there might be something at the end of the causal chain there, but I'm not referring to that because, partly because I'm not being systemically sensitive to the characteristics of the washing machine. You know, it triggered me off in something like the way that the sun can be triggering off your current perception, but it's not triggering me off in the right kind of way to let me refer to it. Yeah. So that's a great case. Another case that you might have in mind is a case where you have false memories of someone who actually existed. Yeah. But there's a fine line between these two, it seems to me. If so long as you've got something that's a dominant source of all that information, and most of it's kind of right, yeah, then you can allow for some false memories about that person. But if most of what you think is wrong, then you start to think, well, this is like the Rumsfeld case or the Louis XIV case.
And then, so like, washing machine.
Yeah.
What if like you didn't know that it was a washing machine, right? Because, like, you were
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So then, does it still count?
Does it still count?
Or I guess, or is it still relevant?
Oh, it's still relevant. Well, one way in which it's relevant is it's one of these maddening cases where you seem to have meaning without reference. Yeah, because if I say that robot, it seems to mean something. Yeah, but it's a slightly difficult case that. I mean, I'm not referring to anything, right? The causal theory is getting that right. Yeah. But when you say, if you say you got meaning without, that's one way it's relevant. It seems to be a case where the causal theory gives the right answer. I mean, the causal theory explained the way I just explained it, you know, in terms of that systematic responsiveness to various dimensions of the object. Yeah. The causal theory is getting it right there. Another way in which it's relevant is you might say, well, it still means something when you say that robot. But even there, if you just listen with a good ear to that case, when you say that robot was scary, yeah, the trouble is, once I know the situation, I'm not going to say that kind of seriously. You know, if I say that robot was scary, I'm not saying something I mean you to treat as literally true. Yeah, even though I can use even though it's not like I'm just babbling if I say that. Yeah. Okay. Did you have a question? Did you have a question? It went away. Okay. Okay, so if it works like that for perception and memory, and these are the most primitive kinds of information gathering we have, then talking to each other is presumably like that too. If I meet someone very arresting and I'm telling you about this guy I met, yeah, then I collected information from them perceptually. Maybe I met them over a period of time, and now I tell you. And now you are getting a whole bunch of information about that person. And you can, maybe I tell you down the telephone about this. So if that happens, then it's kind of like the sun and the bag case, where the telephone is causally implicated when I'm telling you about someone down the telephone. And you can say to someone, Campbell met this person he's very impressed by and so on, and tell them about this person. So you can refer to them. The phone was causally involved my phone was causally involved in the conversation, but you're not in a position to refer to my phone in the same way. What you're lifting out from his background is the person that we were talking about. So testimony can work like that too. I mean, language works like that. Language is just long-range perception. You see what I mean? That's the point of having language. That I see a whole bunch of stuff and I tell you about it, and now it's for you, just as if you'd seen it. Yes?
But we can refer with language to things we can't perceive, like abstract objects.
Abstract objects. What kind of thing? I mean, what's an abstract object? The number two. Yeah, I agree we can refer to the number two, sure.
But it couldn't be much like perception.
It couldn't be much like perception. Well, I don't know. I mean, we'll talk more about this on Monday, yeah? But the point about this is that this is how you get knowledge, right? Knowledge is ultimately a causal notion. And that's why reference is a causal notion when you're referring to concrete objects, yeah? Now, the thing about abstract objects is, and I think it's really good to always keep abstract objects in mind, but abstract objects, I make the following claims that I will try to back up on Monday, right? Knowledge is a causal notion, yeah? To get knowledge of stuff, to get knowledge of your surroundings, you have to be causally interacting with them. Reference is causal because knowledge is causal. With the world of numbers, it is different. You know what you get when you add 2 and 2. You know what you get when you multiply 3 by 4. Do you know that because you're causally interacting with the numbers? No, you do not know that because you're causally interacting with the numbers. Your knowledge of the numbers is quite different, therefore, to your knowledge of the concrete world. I'm sorry, you look absolutely astounded. No, I do that too. Okay. Okay. We'll come back to this on Monday. But your knowledge of the abstract world, your knowledge of the world of numbers, is quite different to your knowledge of the concrete world. Therefore, reference to concrete objects is a quite different phenomenon than reference to abstract objects. There's a schematic level at which they're the same thing, that they're both aspects of semantic value. Yeah, but when you fill in how you got the semantic value, it looks quite different. You can go back to this on Monday too. Okay. There were 3 questions. 3, and there was someone else down here. Okay. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Yes.
It's kind of something that we define and then we learn things about it based on our own definition.
Yeah.
So
I see why you say that. It's not unreasonable to say that. It also seems to be true, though, that when you think about the postulates that you have in mind, axioms you might derive 2 plus 2 is 4 from, 2 plus 2 is 4 always seems to be more definite and certain than those abstract postulates. You see what I mean? When you look at the abstract postulates that you might derive 2 plus 2 is 4 from, you kind of blink and you say, is that right? And then you find out you can derive 2 plus 2 is 4 from it, and you think, oh, okay, that's fine then. You see what I mean? That the basic thing you have knowledge of, the first thing you have knowledge of is that 2 plus 2 is 4. If you ask a child, is 2 plus 2 4, then a well-trained child will tell you yes. Do they know anything about these postulates? No.
Right. I'm just saying that is a simplification, right? And I was just thinking that might be the difference between.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's right. If you're trying to deepen our understanding of the numbers, then you'd look for abstract axiom systems in a way that seems completely pointless in the case of, or at any rate, Not so, not at all so obviously the thing to reach for in the case of physical objects, the system of postulates. Last couple. You got a sound? Can you put it in a sound bite for us? Yeah.
When you're talking about abstract objects, what about a triangle, for instance? You don't have, some sort of causal connection to the triangle.
That's right.
Some sort of abstract relation as well.
That's right. That's why I think Melissa is right. It's always good to keep in mind the abstract objects because they don't work causally. Yeah. So I just agree with that.
So would you say that's innate knowledge?
Innate. Yes. but that needs a lot of glossing. Okay. And last question of all.
Oh, I was just going to say, in the distinction that Melissa brought out, just something that underlies the idea of API and empirical knowledge.
That's right. That's right. I think that Melissa might not agree, but I think that's right. Okay, I really have been trying to fill out kind of the intuitive background to the ideas Evans is appealing to. I hope if you look at the article, some of these ideas will drop into place. But we'll talk more explicitly about what's going on in Evans on Monday. Okay, thanks guys. Great comments.